Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Nicki LaFoille, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to make this little cozy for your coffee and tea mugs. And this one is a little bit different from the tutorials you may have seen for these because I wanted to make sure that it was microwave safe because I'm always forgetting that I have made my tea, and then 45 minutes later, I remember, and then by that time it's cold, so I have to reheat it. So I wanted to make sure I could leave my cozy on as I was popping it in and out of the microwave to reheat. And a lot of times these tutorials you'll find they have a elastic and a button as the closure, and that is not microwave safe. So this one, totally microwave safe, and I'll walk you through it step by step. It's a really easy project. Do download the PDF that you will find. There will be a link in the description of the video and a QR code right there on your screen to scan to download that full supplies list and full bulleted instructions to walk you through it step by step. But it is very easy, and the supplies list is very, very minimal. And if you are watching live and if you have any questions at all, please type them into the comment section and I'll see them, get any questions answered for you. And if you have any comments, comment on the project, where you're watching from, what projects you want to see me do next. I'd love to hear from you. So, like I said, the supplies requirement is very small, as you can imagine, just scraps of fabric, really. But the type of fabric that you are using is what's important here, because to be microwave safe, we need this to be a natural fiber. So cotton is going to be your best bet for that. 100% cotton fabric, 100% cotton batting. We have a layer of batting in here to make it so that it protects your fingers from the heat of the porcelain. And then 100% cotton thread. If you're using a fiber or a fabric that has synthetic materials, it's not microwave safe. It can potentially melt in the microwave and even start a fire. So if you are not totally sure what the fiber content of your materials are, it is just the safest bet to purchase something new so that you can be totally sure that it is 100% cotton. So once you have your cotton materials, you are going to be making this cozy according to the dimensions of one of your mugs. And I say in the PDF that there's some wiggle room here because of the way this attaches with my tie and my loop. You have some room for cinching this in, so it will fit mugs of a certain range of sizes. So you can't, it won't just be for one mug. So let's take some measurements. So ruler, measuring tape, you want to measure the height of your mug. Jot that down. And that's going to be the height of the rectangle that we cut because we're using 1/4 inch seam allowances. So if you cut it to the height of the mug, it gives you a 1/4 inch on the top and bottom when it is finished. You want to measure the circumference of your mug. So wrap that around, measure your circumference, and you want to subtract a 1/2 inch from the circumference so that you have that space for your loop. So subtract 1/2 inch, and those are the dimensions of the rectangle that you need to cut. And if you don't want to go get your mug right now, I'll tell you the measurements of my mug, or the measurements of my rectangle, was at 3 3/4, because that's the height of my mug, by 10 inches. So, and that is a relatively, I'm not going to say standard or anything, but this is just a very sort of generic mug. So that size of rectangle for that size of cozy is going to fit a lot of mugs. So 3 3/4 by 10 inches. And I cut 2 rectangles of fabric, and I'm actually doing different fabric on the inside and outside. So it is reversible technically. So cut your 2 rectangles of fabric to that size. You'll also need to cut some strips for your loop and for your ties. So you will need a 1.5 inch by 2.5 inch strip and a 1.5 by 13 inch strip. We'll do some folding and pressing on those in just a minute. And then your batting, you want to cut slightly smaller than your outer fabric. I want to try to keep that batting out of my seam allowances. It just makes things a little bit easier and less bulky. So you want to cut your batting slightly smaller in each direction. So 1/2 inch smaller in each direction than the main fabric rectangles, which, because we're using 1/4 inch seam allowances, will get you keeping that batting out of the seam. Jenna says, hello from San Francisco. Beautiful morning here. Hello, Jenna. Thank you so much for tuning in. Yvonne says, good morning from Lapeer, Michigan. I'm also coming at you from Michigan this morning. So hello, fellow Michigander. All right, so to get started, let me switch my camera over here so you can see my workspace. So let's look at our ties first. Let's just do that first before we get started on anything else. So I'm gonna bring my little pressing mat in here. So for your ties on your long 13 inch strip, first you will want to fold that short end in. So I've actually already pressed these. So fold that in roughly 1/4 inch and then fold each long edge to meet in the center. So I started doing this by folding it in half, pressing to get that center crease, unfold, and then press those long edges to meet in the center so that all of those raw edges are encased. And you want to do the same thing on the other side so that both of the short ends are folded in and encased. And give that a press. And then for your short strip, we don't need to finish the short edges. Those are going to be stitched into the seam. So for this, just fold it in half, press, unfold it, and then fold those raw edges to meet in at the center, and then press. I've already pressed mine, but I'm going to just give it another hit with my iron here. Hello, Susan from Texas. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. And Valerie from New Jersey. Got people all over the country this morning. I love to see it. All right, now I'm going to grab my rectangles. And as you can see, I've already rounded off the edges of my rectangles. And in the instructions, I say you can use a thread spool, put your thread spool on the corner to draw your curve. It's really just a gentle curve. So you can just sort of eyeball it as well. But I'm just gonna round off all of my corners at this point. So I'm just aligning that thread spool with the corner and tracing it. And I've drawn it on 2 of my corners so I can just fold it in half and then get all of my corners rounded off nicely. And that's an optional step. You can just leave your corners square. You'll have to pivot around the corners when you're stitching, which is fine. But sometimes when you're trying to get a nice, 90-degree corner, you get that, the bulk of the fabric in, and sometimes it just doesn't turn out as well. So a rounded corner I find is a little bit easier to get nice and smooth. Okay, so the corners are rounded. Now, I like to do a little bit of quilting. I don't know if you can, oh yeah, you can see it on the camera. This, again, another optional step, but I like the look of it. So I'm going to put some lines, and I've already done my lines going this way. So I'm just going to do like a little diamond cross hatch. So I'm going corner to corner. And then I'm going 2 inches away from my center line on each side. And you can quilt this however you like. You can do straight lines. You can make your diamond cross hatch even smaller. Get more quilting lines in there. So I've got my quilting lines in each direction, and I'm just using my friction pen. So when I hit that with some heat, those are going to disappear. All right, so wrong side up for my fabric that I'm going to be quilting, and then I'm going to take my batting and center it on the wrong side. I'm going to put some pins in just to hold it while I do my quilting. Bring my machine in, and I'm just going to stitch over these lines that I've drawn. And I've got 100% cotton thread. I'm using sulky thread. So that is, like I was saying, important to have all 100% cotton materials. And it's just worth noting that all-purpose thread is not 100% cotton. All-purpose thread is a polyester core cotton wrapped thread. So that is not appropriate for this if you want to make yours microwave safe. This is a great project for using up scraps. Fabric requirements are very small, and it's just a great way to use up some of those beautiful fabrics that you have just a little bit left of. Because of the way I'm making this, I'm not binding the edges. We're going to be turning things right side out. So I'm only quilting through the front layer. One more line of quilting. Okay, so there's my quilting, and you can still kind of see the black of my pen behind it. So I'm just going to hit it with my iron, and you'll see how those lines disappear. I really like those friction pens because they just disappear so easily. So now you just see my quilting lines. So I'm going to set this aside for a quick second, and we're going to bring in our ties again. So we folded and pressed these, and now we want to edge stitch this open edge to seal that up. So I'm grabbing my starter square just to start my seam. And then we're edge stitching just right at the edge of this little strip that we have made. So there is my loop. We're going to do the same thing with this one, except we are going to start at the open edge of we're going to start at the folded edge of the short end, stitch across the short end, and then pivot and stitch this open edge to close it up. So again, my starter square. And then I'm going to pivot with the needle down in the corner. And then stitch this long edge. And then we'll pivot again at the short edge to stitch across that short edge. And I'll back stitch to lock that. Okay, so there is my tie. Now to put this all together, I'm going to take one of my rectangles and fold it in half lengthwise, hot dog style, and just do a little finger press at the side just to mark the center. And then that's just for our placements, for our loop and our tie. So for my loop, I'm going to just fold it. I mean, you can fold it just in half if you want, but I like to go like this to make it this type of loop. And then I'm going to place that at one of my center marks so that the raw edges are aligned. And then for my tie, I want to fold this. And for this one, I like to fold it so that it is not in half, just because of the way that I like to tie my cozy onto my mug. I'm going to fold it so that we've got about 3 inches left here. So it's almost like thirds, it kind of looks like. Got 1/3 up here and then the rest down here. Not really thirds. It's like, well, it is thirds. Like this end comes halfway between here and here. Yeah, that's thirds. So fold that, and I like to fold it so that it is not like straight on each other, but it is a little bit of a V. And then we're going to put the fold at the edge, at this edge, and we've got the ties pointing in this way. And then you want to make sure your ties stay inside so you don't accidentally catch that in the stitching. And then we're going to go right sides together. And we're going to stitch the perimeter using our 1/4 inch seam allowance, but we want to leave an opening along one of these centers, just a couple of inches. It doesn't need to be huge. Leave that open so that we can turn everything right side out. So in theory, you're going to be stitching right along the edge of your batting, but in practice, if you get a little bit of the batting in the seam, it's fine. If your batting is a little bit smaller than a 1/4 inch from the edges, that's fine. Just follow your 1/4 inch seam allowance markings on your throat plate. So I'm starting at the start of my opening. So one side of my opening, going 1/4 inch around this corner. So it's a gentle curve around the corner. So I want to make sure I'm making gentle adjustments around the curve. And then there's my loop that I just went across. So I'm gently lifting the presser foot a little bit every couple of stitches to follow that gentle curve around the corner. Oops. Okay, I'm going over my tie right here. And then coming up to the other side of my opening, so I'm going to backstitch and cut my thread. And then before I go to turn anything right side out, because I've got my curve at my corners here, I'm just going to trim that off a little bit using my pinking shears, get rid of some of that bulk around our corners. And then I'm going to reach in through the opening and just push all of this right side out. So my corners look nice and round. If you have left your corners square, you might just need to use your point turner to get in there and poke out your corners. And I'm going to bring my iron in quick to just press this. Press it nice and flat. It's going to make everything look nice and flat and crisp. And then for our opening here, we want to tuck these raw edges in 1/4 inch. So if you just kind of like get your fingers in the edges here and just sort of make the fabric taut, it will sort of fold in on itself the correct amount. So I'm just sort of rolling this to make sure that my seam is right at the edge, all the way around. And then we're just going to top stitch. And our top stitching will close up that opening that we left for turning, and also just make a nice sort of decorative touch around the edge to sort of frame this in. All right. Bring my machine back in. And then I'm going to start right here at the opening and edge stitch. So put a back stitch here. And edge stitch just about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. Maybe even a little less. And again, as we go around these corners, I want to go slow, make small adjustments so that I stay nice and even with the edge. I love making these little cozies because, like I said, I'm always, forgetting about my tea, and I want to be able to reheat it and protect my fingers. My microwave is also, it's one of those that's above the stove. So I have to, and I'm kind of a short person, so I have to reach up to get my mug out of the microwave. And if it's hot, I'm always afraid I'm going to drop my mug on myself with hot tea. So this is the perfect solution. Protect my fingers from my hot coffee mug. All right, so there's my top stitching all the way around. So it's quilted, it's top stitched. I've got my ties over here and my loop over here. I trim a couple of these threads. And then, of course, you could also use it with that side out. But then this just wraps right around. And because of the way that I like to tie this, so we can kind of cinch it down. And then this long tie goes around, and then I do like a half bow, kind of like a slip knot, so that it's easy to tie. And then it's easy to untie too, just by pulling that long bit of your tie. So there's your cozy. And also, we went through how to measure your mug for the size of this. If you want more room up here at the upper edge, you could slide it down a little bit, but you could also just take the measurement of your mug. And if you want more room for, when you're sipping that, you don't want to put your mouth on this, you could just take another 1/4 inch off of this measurement when you go to cut your rectangle. So there is your perfectly microwavable, microwave-friendly coffee cup cozy. Say that 3 times fast. So there's your project. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you make this project, use up some of your scraps, make one for the coffee or tea lover in your life. It would be a really cute little gift. So I hope you love it. Hope you enjoy the project, and thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Have a great day.